Okay, so it's recording. That way, for anybody that didn't make it, or if you want to review it, you'll have a link. I'll upload the link today. So we're going to talk about this assignment that's coming up in week 6. I'm giving you a head start on it. You'll find it under the modules. It's the Pathophysiology of Disease Process paper. And the most confusing part of this paper is choosing what disease you're going to work on. Because you choose one disease process, and it can't be something that's already done in your textbook in the clinical modules. And that's because those clinical modules pretty much answer everything that has to do with this paper. So it wouldn't be a good learning experience. Instead, you just be, getting it right out of your textbook rather than learning more about something that you want to know more about. So let's see how we can figure out which disease process to do. And how I want to do that is bring up your book. Okay, so you should be seeing your book right now. Is everybody seeing an Applied Pathophysiology book?
Yes.
Okay, so say you're thinking, boy, my mom or somebody I know just went to the doctor and they told them they have hypertension. So I really want to know more about hypertension. So I love ebooks because you can just search anything. You don't have to look too much. Hypertension. Okay, so here we have everywhere in the book where it actually talks about hypertension. But I usually go to the index first because then I can see where's the main area for the hypertension. 410. 410 is going to be my main page to find about hypertension. And the main thing I'm looking for here is the disease process I want to write about. I just want to make sure it's not a clinical model. So I'm going to go in here and lo and behold, chapter 16, hypertension, is one of the clinical models. So that would be something I could not write about. So then I might look around in the chapter and find something other than hypertension. And the reason that you can't, of course, like we talked about, can't use the clinical models because it'll tell you everything. There's the pathophysiology and the clinical manifestations, and pretty much everything that you would have written in your paper is already there. So that would be one you could not use. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? How to find out if your one you're thinking about is a clinical model?
Yeah, that'd make it too easy for us.
Yeah. So, well, it wouldn't be a good learning experience. And if you're going to do work and do a paper, don't you want it to be worth your while and something that's going to broaden your nursing knowledge? So you want to find out something different you really want to know about it. So that's what you're going to do. You're just going to search your ebook to see if it's a clinical model. And if it's not, goody, use that one. If you can't find it or you're having a question about it, let your instructor know and they'll help you search too. But pretty much if you call me and say, can I do this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to search the book just to see if it's a clinical model. If it's not, you're good to go. That's the how to choose what you want to write about. Anybody have any questions about your topic?
No.
All right, so we're moving right along. This is like your big formative assignment, so it's going to pretty much cover all of your course outcomes. Now, it's a formal paper, so your paper has to have a title page and a reference page, and you have to have it in APA 6th edition format. So if you want to know how to do your title or reference page, we have lovely samples in our courses. So if you just simply go under modules, which you go to, you have to go every week to go to modules. If you go to modules, you can go here where it says APA template and samples. There's an well, this is AMA. If you're, is anybody here from PTA? If you're a PTA student, you use AMA. If you're a nursing student, it's APA. So here's where we come for our samples. So if you're a nursing student, you would open up your APA template, which I'm sure you've probably used already before. So if this is redundant, I'm sorry. Go to your sample paper, and it's like a little cheat sheet for how to do this. If I can make it fit on here. Okay, so here it is. View it. Page 100%. Okay, so it shows you how to do the running head at the top. So you just, I know it's odd. There's a lot of oddities of APA formatting, but it's what we use as nurses. So you have the word running head like that in a colon, and then in all caps, it's part of your title. So if you just want to make your title the name of your disease process, that's fine too. Then you just put that up there, and then you number your pages up here in this corner. And so this is just a sample. If your instructor in other classes wants more stuff on that, fine. They'll let you know. Otherwise, you're going to put the title of your paper, your name. This is I'm a Student's paper. You could have the name of your school there and what course it's for. This is kind of a basic title page. Some faculty sometimes want a date in there, so just ask your faculty. If you're in my class, you don't need the date. Okay, so that's what your title page looks like. And then basically, what I would do is just break it down by whatever your parts of your rubric say, and we're going to go through that. So if it says do an introduction or do the pathophysiology or do whatever, that's what I break them down as, because you know what? That just hones your instructor's eyes right to there to say, look, this is where I'm covering that's in the rubric, and here's what I'm saying about it. It just really helps your faculty member know that, okay, that's where it is. Because if it's just a big long paper, we are trying really hard to go through to make sure you have everything, because we want you to have as many points as you've earned. And it makes it hard for us if it's just one big paper with no break-in sections. So let's look at the rubric, and we'll try to break them up by those different criteria. And then your reference page is all by itself on the last page. It's got the word references at the top, just a capital R, the rest are small letter references, and it's in the middle. And then here we have them, and they're in alphabetical order. And they have the hanging indent, which is the first line is flush to the margin, and every line after is indented. And my dog is here whining. I'm so sorry. Okay, so any questions about how to get your stuff for APA? Also, if you're using a lot of things from the internet, in that same module where it said APA template, there's videos in there that I made. You can listen to those, and it helps you with APA for electronic resources. But if you get stuck, just question to the instructor and say, well, I'm using this. How do I cite it and reference it? I just can't quite figure it out. And the teacher will answer it there, and boy, that's going to help the rest of the class because they see how to do it. So that's number one. You're going to have a reference page. You're going to have a title page. The body of the rest of the paper, so everything in between that title page and the reference page, has to be 3 to 5 pages in length. And if you're answering everything in this rubric, you're definitely going to have that much. Choose one disease process, like we just talked about. You could think of an organ system or a specific organ that you're interested in, and choose a disorder that deals with that. Make sure it's different than those ones that are clinical models. And it just gives you some examples in here. That's all that this is talking about. All right, so now we're going to get to the body of the paper. You're going to start out with an introduction. So you could put that could be your first section, title up there, introduction. Identify the disease process and explain why you chose that particular disease or disorder. Why are you interested in learning more about that? So just put that in your introduction. And then also included needs to be the identification of the population that's most at risk for getting that. So let's talk about it. Say, I don't know, anybody got a disease process they're thinking of? No? How about AFib? I'm interested in AFib because my brother has AFib. So I would say in my introduction, um, I am doing my paper on atrial fibrillation. I'm very interested in this because I have a family member who has been diagnosed with it, and I want to know if I have a genetic tendency towards getting it myself, so I want to know more about it. Then I would look up and do my research on it, and I would say, well, I mean, I can't say right now, but I would say when I did the research, what group of people is more common to get this? Is it mostly people over the age of 50 get diagnosed with this? Is it males more than females? Are there specific ethnicities that tend to get this more often? And that's what I would put in my introduction. Then the next part is going to be to discuss the disease process using terminology relevant to pathophysiology. And that's because here we are in a patho class. You're going to describe the disease process from the cellular, tissue, organ, and organ system levels. So when I do my research, I want to know what cells are being affected that's causing this atrial fibrillation, and how are they involved, and what tissues. Of course, organ, that's going to be the heart and organ system level. So everything that you read, now you might not have everything, you might not have cellular or tissue, but you need to say that. In my research, mainly focused on the organ. In my case with AFib, of course it will be, it's going to talk about conduction and electrical conduction through the cells. So I might have specific cells involved. Tissue would be muscle tissue. So anyway, look it up. If you have a question, ask your teacher, but just so you're covering it from all aspects. Describe the normal structure and function of this organ system, or the organ, or the cells, or the tissues. How should they normally behave, and what's the alteration caused by the disease process? This is where you're getting kind of into your anatomy and physiology and your structure and function. How should they normally act? What are they doing different now that they have this pathology going on? And then describe, if you're having a tumor or cancer, you're going to describe the cellular proliferation or the tumor. So include your tumor types that you studied. And those are if applicable with the disease. So some diseases you will have different things than others. Then go into the clinical manifestations associated with that pathogenesis. So what are the signs? What are the symptoms? What are we going to see? What's the patient going to tell us? Define the basic approach to diagnosis. Are they going to run tests? Is it going to be simply what you see in the patient? Is it going to be, you're going to have to do exploratory surgery? What are they going to do to give a definitive diagnosis for this? And some of these disease processes that we've been studying, I mean, you've been talking to and saying there really is no specific diagnostic to do this. So then that would come out in your paper. But it's part of what you need to be looking at, so make sure that you talk about it. If there is no test or something to do and you simply leave this number 7 off your paper, then you're going to lose points. So you want to always approach every one of these items. Tell us, there is no specific diagnostic for this disease process. Or if there is, tell us what they are. If there's pain involved, tell us about the pain phenomena. What type of pain? What is it going to feel like? How are we going to manage the pain from this disease? Again, if there is no pain, you would have researched that and found out that there's no pain involved in this, and you need to say that. Because Isn't that just like some of these disease processes we've been reading about? You wonder how they've been walking around with this. Like my dog, for goodness sakes, how has he been walking around with this cancer and cardiomegaly, and he hasn't showed, I mean, happy, lucky dog, hasn't showed any pain from that. So if we had pain, we might be able to diagnose sooner. But some of these diseases don't have pain. Make sure you talk about that in your paper. You don't want to lose points on number 9 because you thought, oop, there's no pain, I'm not going to worry about it. Let's hear about it. Then you're going to describe the healing or recovery process of the tissues or organs. Is the tissue even capable of recovery or regeneration? Some of the body parts, the tissues can regenerate. We want to hear about that. So with the treatment, explain if things are going to get better, the tissues are going to heal, organs are going to recover, there's going to be regeneration. If not, you need to explain it. Why are things going to get better or why not? It's another one of those things. Don't just leave it blank. Don't say, well, there's no healing going to happen, so don't worry about it. No, you need to go through all of these things and talk about it. And then they'll do a conclusion. So again, you can have a conclusion word up on top there and just summarize your paper's key points. Make sure you're supporting your information with at least 2 scholarly resources. No Wikipedia. If you all been through NUR 125, you know what a scholarly resource is and you've been using them. So make sure you have at least 2 scholarly resources. And then use correct format. If you're a nursing student, APA, and are physical therapy students, AMA. All right. Any questions about these instructions? Should we look at the rubric? Basically the same thing, but it helps you, this is what your teachers are going to be looking for. So the first thing we're going to say, introduction, make sure you include these things. Make sure you include age, gender, ethnicity, the different populations that are at risk, and why you want to study that part. Here's how we'll break it down. So if there's one thing missing, you lose some points, a couple things missing. So when you're writing your paper, it's best to have this rubric with you and then just walk through and go, oh, do I have all this in my introduction? Did I discuss this in terminology for patho? And did I include cellular, tissue, organ systems? Did I describe everything that's supposed to be in here? Here's your clinical manifestations, diagnostics, treatment, the pain phenomena. Make sure you have that. That's worth 15 points. So unfortunately, when you leave things off, you get to lose a chunk of points. So make sure you talk about it. If there is pain, what's it like? Describe it. How do you manage it? What are you going to give these patients? If there's no pain, why is there no pain? Talk about it. Why is there no pain? And that there wouldn't need to be managed. Recovery or healing process, again, same thing. Is there a chance for regeneration? Are the tissues going to heal? And then your conclusion, which is your key stuff, key points of your paper. Paper is 3 to 5 pages. That doesn't include your reference or title pages. So make sure you have the bulk of it in there. And then we looked at where to find a sample of the title page and reference page. And then double check, make sure you do, what do they call that when you're checking the spelling and...
Spell check?
Is that what it's called, spell check? Okay, yeah, do a spell check. Spell and check it out, make sure that everything's right. Check your grammar, make sure your first letters are of each sentence is capitalized, and you probably won't have a problem because I don't think too many are going to be doing it on their phones, but just want to make sure you've got everything in there. And that's the whole paper. It's worth 125 points, so that's 12.5% of your grade, so we're going to make sure you capture as much of that as possible. All right, so this is the whole assignment. Does anybody have any questions at all about it?
No.
Okay, there's the APA stuff. It's due week 6, right? Make sure. We're in week 5 right now. It's going to be due at the end of week 6, April 15th, midnight. But you got plenty of time to get started on it early. So that's why I thought we'd better get over this. Okay, Mohammed, do you have any questions or statement or anything for your students?
I think you did summarize all the point that I would like to see my student covering. Just minor point to remind the student. For example, we don't need to see a lot of quotations. That is not gonna make the paper personal. It's just make it more like cut and paste.
That's
so
true.
We need less quotations.
Right. 80% of the paper must be in your own words. So less quotations is always better. In fact, forget the quotations. Just read it and put it in your words. Think about it as if you're talking to a patient. I'm telling my patient, look, this is what you have. Let's really talk about it. And your patient, you wouldn't just say, well, I'm going to read you from this book, because they want to hear you, want to know that you understand that what's going on with this person. So put it in your own words. That's a good point, Mohammed.
Okay, the second point, they're gonna do more than once of the in-text citation, because it's look like a multiple discussion. So they need to cite, they do in-text citation more than once.
Correct. It's going to be a long paper, so you're going to, what I would do is I make my reference sheet first. Always do your references first, because then it's a piece of cake doing the citations, because you know all the things you're going to start with. You're going to have the author's names and you're all ready to go. You get your page 177 of the manual out. You've already got your references, so now you're going to cite according to the page 177. But you can't just write the whole paper and put a citation at the very end and call it good, because where did that bulk of information that you're talking about, that you're talking about the diagnostics, that might have come from one paper or resource? Then you put your citation there. If you start talking about something else and that came from a different resource, put that citation there. So you might have the same citation from one resource a couple places in your paper. So yes, strew them throughout, and that's where you got the information. You don't have to only have a citation for quotes. You can paraphrase and then put the citation from that resource. See, like up in here, see how we talk about Braun and Anderson 2017 up here, right in your paper instructions? It's just right in the body there, because not that this is a quote, but this is just talking about something that's in the book. Okay? So yes.
Okay, yeah, the third point is the abbreviations. Like some student, they write the common name, for example, CDC. They need to spell out what CDC means and any other abbreviation, especially in the first location. And then in
Correct.
subsequent location, they can do the abbreviation.
That's absolutely right. So even in the reference, if you're going to say you got something from the CDC and there's no other author, it's a group, the CDC posted it, so your reference would say Centers for Disease. Oh, what's the Centers for Disease? CDC. What's CDC? It's longer.
Center for Disease Control.
Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So you'd have to write that whole thing out. Then you could put parentheses CDC, and then whatever the date of your article that you got it from. If you got it just off the website here, you can drop down and they don't have a date, so it'd be ND. And then in your paper, the first time you're talking, you're going to have to spell out the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2000 whatever, and then subsequently you can use your CDC and then your dates.
Good. And my last point is about the references. I think you already mentioned it. but to highlight it, URLs are not enough. They have to write some complete reference.
Hold on. Sorry about that. Somebody came in my door and my 9 dogs went ballistic. So, where were we? We were talking about.
I said that my last point is about the URLs.
Correct.
URLs are not enough. They have to highlight it to write the complete reference, not
That's
just the URLs.
You can't just put a
URLs.
website because if you just put a website in your reference page, what are you going to use for your citation? You need a lot more than just that reference sheet or page. So if you come in here, this is the Pages tab. I hope everybody has been in the Pages tab quite frequently. But if you come into your Pages tab, there's some videos down here, and you can click on it, and they'll walk you through how to get all the stuff you need for your reference and use for your citation when you're using websites. And then, like I told you, if you still have a question, say you've got a website and you can't find an author and you can't find a date to save your life, and you just don't know how you're going to cite this, and if you don't, or reference it rather, and if you don't have a good reference, you can't come up with a citation. It's a double whammy. I would get a hold of your instructor and say, I need a little help with this. And together, the two of you, or two of anybody's working with you, can figure it out. And my goodness, if your instructor is helping you put that together, they're going to think it's just fine and you won't lose any points. So work together, but look at this videos if you have time, because they'll kind of walk you through it. I think it's a little more clear than just trying to use the APA manual. I am sure that by the time that the 7th edition of APA comes out, they're going to have a lot more detail on electronic resources. But in the meantime, you cannot just put the website down and that is your reference. You need to know, is there an author? If there's no author, what's the title of this article? Put the title of the article. Put the date. If you don't have a date, if there's no date, it's just a small N period, D period, right? Then go on and put the name of the website that you found it at, and then retrieved from, and that's where you put the URL. Now, if it's a major site like the Heart Association or the CDC or something like that, and there's no individual author, it could be a group author that it comes from. Put the group author on. This is from the CDC. This is from the Heart Association. Put that first, then the date, then the name of the article, then retrieved from, and just put the URL in. The only time you need that date, the retrieved from date, and then the URL, is if it's some materials that are going to change over time. But if you're pulling an article out from a website, that's not going to change. So all you need is retrieved from in the website. You don't need a date that you pulled it off of there on. Okay. Good points, Mohammed. Anything
Thank you.
else?
I'll leave it to the student. Thank you. I finished my points.
Very good. That was good points. Brian, Elizabeth, Lori, any questions?
Nope, I think you explained everything well.
Okay. Sorry about those
Thank
dogs.
you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn this into a link so we can post and you can share with everybody. If you have any questions, make sure hit that questions to the instructors or shoot your professor an email or give us a call. Okay?
All right.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
so much,
you.
Brian.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.